Thank you for tuning in to our Invest Boston 2023 launch conference. You're about to watch panel number 1, Building Bay State, a look into Boston's real estate development. Enjoy.
Mr. President, thank you for hosting us today. Thank you for your leadership of this incredible jewel of a university system. We are so grateful for the role that UMass plays in our economy and our community, so thank you. I also want to thank Abby and her team at Capital Analytics. Natalie, wherever you are, thank you for the millions of emails I sent you when I told you I wouldn't send you any more. And a quick shout out to someone who's not here, Sophia, who was on their team, who just had a baby. You just want to make sure you let her know that we're thinking about her and congratulate her. So thank you all. You've been terrific partners, and thank you for all your work. So my name is J.D. Cheslap. I am President and CEO of the Massachusetts Business Roundtable. So we're an organization of about 90 or 95 CEOs, senior executives from large companies across the Commonwealth with a mission of making Massachusetts a better place to do business. We have a particular focus in our agenda, you're going to hear this a lot today, on talent, the recruitment, retention, development, and diversity of the state's talent pool. It really is our chief competitive advantage. So I'm going to pick up where President Meehan left off. Here's how I think about it, how we at the Roundtable think about competitiveness. So in this year's CNBC Top States for Business rankings, Massachusetts was rated amongst the best for technology and innovation, for education, for access to capital, quality of life, health, and notably this year, inclusion. Similarly, this past summer, Massachusetts was rated by WalletHub as the best state to live in the country, driven by top rankings, again, for education and health, and high rankings in categories such as the economy, quality of life, and safety. We have a really strong economic foundation in this state for continued economic growth and success. There's a lot of really good stuff going on here. But, or and, my wife says, say and, not but, both publications note similar warning signs. Massachusetts is an expensive place to live and it's an expensive place to do business. CNBC Rankings has us 49th in the country for cost of doing business and 47th for cost of living, driven in large part by our cost of housing. And the Tax Foundation State Business Tax Climate Index, released just last month, we fell to 46th from 34th, primarily due to the recently adopted tax on income over $1 million. So all of this has consequences, right? The Mass Taxpayers Foundation estimates that the state is seeing its highest outmigration numbers in the last 30 years. I was just talking with Joe Campanelli from Needham Bank prior about that, the importance of that issue here. And in a survey of Roundtable members this past spring, 75% of them expect some difficulty in recruiting talent over the next year. These are the types of issues that were addressed so thoroughly in the Invest Report, so thank you, Abby and team, and really is the focus of the conversations we're having today. You're about to hear from a panel focusing on the region's real estate landscape and its impact on workforce, which I'm happy to introduce, and there's a whole bunch of other conversations that Abby outlined before. In all of these conversations, as the president suggested, you're going to see a consistent theme around workforce. In my mind, this should not be a surprise. In Massachusetts, our competitiveness is fundamentally about our people, and it always has been here. So let's just jump right into these conversations. We're thrilled you're all here, engaging in this dialogue, providing leadership in your communities necessary to address the challenges, but also build on our strengths and continue to make the city and state an amazing place to live, work, and do business. So with that, let's kick off our first panel. Thank you and have a great morning, everybody.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. First, I'd like to take a minute to thank Capital Analytics and the UMass Club for graciously hosting us this morning. It is Thanksgiving week, and I myself would rather be waiting in line at Roach Brothers for another 45 minutes. So my name is Joseph O'Malley. I'm a CPA MSD, and I'm a tax principal at LGA. We're a full-service firm providing tax, assurance, outsourced management accounting, and business advisory service. We have 3 offices, one based in Woburn, our flagship, Chestnut Hill, where I sit, and Salem, New Hampshire. I've been working in area taxation, generally known as private client services, for the last 17 years, which deals with high net worth individuals and their families, trust, estate, and closely held businesses. I am a last minute sickness substitute, so if I see apprehensive or nervous, I do apologize. But not only do I have my colleagues in front of me, I also have the Boston University Questrom School of Business to my left, where I'm a graduate, and I feel that I'm being judged on both sides, so I do apologize. I prefer the two of you do not mix and talk about my academic history. I'll leave it at that. So some opening messages, because I was giving a script, and I'm going to read the opening messages. So we're all aware of the challenging downtown Boston commercial real estate market, a problem born from the COVID epidemic and further exacerbated by an aging public transportation system and a continuing uncertainty about return to the office. But Boston's resilient, and we can and will work collaboratively to fix these problems. Despite downturns, or the appearance of downturns, always provide opportunities. Boston continues to be a leader in academics, medicine, and technology. And that's obvious from the price of residential homes and the demand for them in the greater area. And for the first time in what seems like decades, and excuse the analogy, the Boston commercial real estate market is dealing with a 2-8 record. But there's always a draft and there's always a next season. And if on December 18th, Taylor Swift doesn't come to Gillette, we may have a win before the end of the season. She does come, we're all at her collective mercy. But I'll defer back to real estate. So it gives me pleasure to introduce our panelists today and ask that you tell them quickly about themselves and their organizations. First, I'd like to introduce Kate Dineen, CEO of Better City. Kate?
Thank you so much, Joe, and thanks for stepping in at the last minute. We got your back. My name is Kate Dineen, and I'm president and CEO of an organization called A Better City. We are a nonprofit that's based here just at the other end of Beacon Street. And we are focused on ways to enhance and improve the quality of the built environment because we believe it enhances the region's overall economic competitiveness and also uplifts our communities. So we're a membership-based organization. We have about 130 member institutions, including UMass Boston and many others in this room, who are really invested in the research and advocacy that we do around transportation and infrastructure, land use and development, and climate. So we're really excited to be part of this conversation today. And we will get a little bit more into, I think, some of our priorities that overlap in the conversation. So thanks, Joe.
Sure. Next is Greg Janey, CEO of Janey Construction Management.
So good morning. Well, first of all, thank you. I want to thank Abby and Capital Analytics for being here. Abby, by the way, I'm on your team. That was a fantastic recovery, losing the second half of your script. I happened to do the same thing before. So I want to say thank you, folks, for getting us together. When I first learned about this discussion, of course, I was excited. You know, getting the built environment together to really talk about not just challenges, but some of the solutions that I really look forward to learn about today was exciting to me. I think I want to just reel back before I mention on an overview some challenges, a different perspective, a perspective of where I come from, this crazy small town, big town, not a city. This is really a big town in Boston. Been here probably 6 generations. But the reason I mention that is because I'm going to offer a unique perspective about the challenges in the commercial real estate. You know, when we talk about adaptive reuse, Boston is very protective about everything, and gets involved in everything with the community. So the challenge is not just with historical adaptive reuse. I see them in obviously environmental and sustainability. We all have the challenge with that. Access to capital, that's a common theme with all of us. And I think what we heard earlier, more importantly, is workforce and training. And you'll hear later on today what we're doing specifically about workforce and training, and that is starting early, particularly in STEM. When I mean early, I'm talking about very, very early. So again, glad to be here. Look forward to speaking with all of you, and thank you very much.
And last, I'd like to introduce Peter Evans, EVP and Managing Principal of Hunneman.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here this morning. I've been in the commercial real estate industry in Boston since 1992. I've ridden a lot of these highs and lows. I'm currently the managing principal and executive vice president at Hunneman. We are a privately owned full-service real estate firm here in Boston, celebrating our 93rd year in business. I'm going to try to keep it as bright and rosy as I possibly can, but I think that the most important thing is that we stick to the facts. And so it kind of is what it is. Looking forward to talking with you all this morning.
Thank you. So the first question's for Kate. Kate, what are the latest developments coming from the mayor's office to stimulate the downtown commercial real estate market?
All right, softball, huh?
These questions were kept under lock and key until this event.
So we had a Better City work very collaboratively with the Wu administration at the city level, and then with the Healy Driscoll administration at the state level on a number, of policies that relate to economic competitiveness in the built environment. And the city, I think, is grappling with some different policy interventions that are designed to address some of the unique challenges that are facing particularly the downtown Boston commercial real estate market. I'll try and keep things a little rosy too. But one major announcement that came out over the summer, and the application is now open, is for the Downtown Residential Conversion Incentive Pilot Program. And that is really an incentive to provide payment in lieu of taxes, pilot incentives, to developers who may be interested in converting existing office buildings to residential. And we know there are many challenges associated with conversions, but the city worked very collaboratively with members of the real estate development community to come up with what we think is a thoughtful program that hopefully will move the needle on a few meaningful conversion projects in downtown Boston. My colleagues on the panel can talk a little bit more about some of the challenges associated with conversions, from cost to technical constraints. But this is a program that's designed to try and catalyze a couple conversions and create meaningful housing. And another theme that is going to run through all of the panels today, I think, is the theme of the housing crisis that we're facing as a Commonwealth, and overall affordability challenges. So that is an intervention that the city announced over the summer, and the application period is now open. I believe they're going to be accepting applications. It's a joint program of the mayor's office and the BPDA. Through June of 2024, and they're trying to catalyze very quick construction starts on that to try and get things moving quickly. I think the city's also thinking creatively about space grants. So they had a successful first round of a very competitive grant program to try and provide incentives for folks opening storefronts in different parts of Boston, downtown, and in the neighborhoods. So I think they're going to be launching a round 2 of that really successful, popular program. And then, more on the development side of things, as I think, as everybody has read, the mayor is thinking about really wide-scale reform of the way we do zoning in the city of Boston, and the way we can reform the Article 80 process. So I think there is a lot of work, from the city side, in kind of thinking about what the different levers are that the city can pull. That being said, there are obviously much broader economic headwinds that everyone is really grappling with and facing at this point. And I think we'll touch upon this a little more in the conversation. But from a Better Cities perspective, transportation access and infrastructure is also a really key part of this conversation. And the city has been incredibly aggressive in advocating for the transit service that the city needs to ensure that we can focus on things like transportation and transit-oriented development, and we can ensure that our workers can get to and from their jobs every day. So transportation is also a part of this equation that the city has worked very collaboratively with the state on to try and really get our regional MBTA back on track.
Thank you, Kate. Appreciate that answer. Next question's for Peter. Peter, as demand for commercial office space continues to decline, with the future demand uncertain, how are investors and developers reimagining the market moving forward?
Another softball.
Yeah.
Downtown Boston's office market alone is about 72 million square feet. We're at an all-time high in vacancy right now at just under 18% vacant. We have almost at equilibrium with the amount of sublease space that's come on the market since the pandemic. And for the tracking systems out there, we right now have about 50% of a return to work on a daily basis in office buildings. And that impact trickles down all to retailers, businesses, transportation. But that being said, there's also roughly 3.5 million square feet of brand new construction being built currently throughout the city. There was a number of office conversions to lab life sciences space over the past couple of years. So I think the one thing that investors and developers alike are looking at right now is time and patience. It's going to take some time. We don't see on the horizon right now what the next great life science or technology boom or what's going to be the next infill for our office markets. But a lot of it is going to be important to get people back to the office so that we can continue to build on the strength of our market prior to the pandemic.
Thank you. Next question is for Greg. Greg, what shifts have there been in the size and nature of the projects being evaluated for 24 and beyond?
Should I say another softball again? But I can pretty much repeat what Peter said. So I'd have to unpack that size and nature. The size to me really hasn't changed. When you look at size, it really depends. I can refer back to the pandemic and the assembly spaces in particular, everyone reacted to. They said, we got to stop building conference centers, meeting spaces, all the assembly spaces, particularly in the downtown Boston area. I think we learned maybe 2 years after that we learned better, and we learned how to go back to the way we are building. So we now, at least our firm, is building many, many conference spaces, particularly 3 projects notably. The World Trade Center in the Seaport, the Omni Hotel, 2 of the largest conference centers in Boston. And so very quickly we responded. So I think we have to learn, I just heard, to be patient about reacting about the market. So I don't not necessarily would say size has changed, because also underway a lot of large life science projects, as we all know, because they pencil out. You don't see a lot of large office buildings for obvious reasons, but large mega projects like we're seeing in Brighton, which you'll hear about later on, and still downtown Boston, to me, are still underway. So I'm not panicking about large projects. I think the quantity will be reduced, but the size won't be reduced. And I'll just lend another thought with arenas in education and institutional areas. That's not going to stop. Large arena and sports spaces are not going to stop. So we're not nervous about that. We're seeing that coming down our pipeline, and we look forward to that strong. Now, the nature of the projects are certainly going to change. We all know because of market evolution, we're going to see more projects of diverse nature because of the diverse use. We all know that the projects, campus-like projects, office, dormitories, life science, have to be mixed use because they simply won't pencil. You're not going to be able to put up 500,000 square feet of office and get money for it. So, diversity with that regard is what we're seeing more of. And then finally, some of the smaller projects. You look at anchoring projects like some of the retail spaces, that continues. So from a builder's perspective, size and nature, there are some shifts, obviously because of market evolution, but the size of projects, we haven't seen them shrink. We happen to see them, less quantity of them, but we haven't seen them shrink at all. So we're confident as well.
Thank you, Greg. The next question's for Kate. Kate, one of the primary challenges with return to work is commuting challenges / public transportation. I think you touched a little bit on this already, but could you elaborate more about how the city and the state are working to address those challenges and concerns?
Absolutely. So this might be a bit of a hot take, but I'm actually optimistic about the T. I'm listening for gasps. Like, So, from a Better Cities perspective, our region cannot survive, let alone thrive, without a functioning public transit system. So this is both an equity issue and an economic competitiveness issue. And I think the good news is that the Healy Driscoll administration and the Wu administration, they get this. And the governor has made some really impactful appointments recently. General Manager Phil Eng came from New York, very experienced, and has really taken the reins and made a lot of internal and external changes. And I think there are some exciting, positive signals. 3 really big pieces of news in the last week and a half. One is that the T announced a very ambitious plan to eliminate all slow zones on the subway system by the end of 2024. This was a long-awaited plan, and hopefully will result in real impacts and improvements for riders and true reliability gains for the system. So that's one, I think, important piece of news. That, of course, will not be without pain. When the work is done, there will be diversions and alternative transportation service in place. But that work is going to be happening all next year, actually starting in December on the Green Line, heads up. Then another really exciting piece of news last week is that the governor formally appointed Secretary Monica Tibbetts-Nutt as Secretary for Transportation. She had been serving in an interim capacity, and she is really a fantastic partner for advocates in the business community and really understands how important our entire transportation system is to our economic competitiveness and equity, not just public transit, but our roads and bridges too. So that's a really good piece of news. And then, I don't know that I'd characterize this as a good piece of news, but last week you may have seen that the T announced a gobsmacking state of good repair estimate of $24.5 billion to get the system back on track. So why would I say that this is good news? This is good news because the T has done the work to assess what investments it will take to go back to a state of good repair and have a long-term reliability. So now, in terms of next steps, we need to see advocates and the business community and the legislature working with the administration and leadership at the T to come up with a comprehensive transportation finance plan to ensure that these investments can be made over time so that we have a safe and reliable and affordable public transit system that can keep our regional economy running. So I think the good news is that the leadership is in place, and now we need to ensure that those leaders have the resources that they need to really get the system back on track. And so I know there's now a lot of focus on the MBTA here in Greater Boston. I think that's also a really good thing.
Thank you, Kate. Kate, when you said gobsmacking, I knew you meant business.
Yeah.
All right. Peter, there is a strong focus on the conversion of office space to lab space to meet the demands over the past few years. As that demand has settled, what are you hearing investors are contemplating to increase the utilization of those assets?
Well, number one, it's really hard to go backwards. When you go through the conversion process, the cost of construction for lab versus office is almost triple. And the rents are almost the same, follow the same suit. So as the demand over the last 24 or 36 months has diminished on the lab front, there's a lot of large vacant lab projects, most notably 601 Congress Street, which is the former John Hancock headquarters in the Seaport. That was sold to a lab developer to be converted to lab, and it is still completely vacant right now. I think the other component that's important to recognize is that anybody that invested in an office building with the intent to convert to lab or life science use did not underwrite the current average rent of downtown Boston of $57 a foot gross. The lab and life sciences operates on a much higher per square foot rate, mostly in the high 90s to low 100s per square foot. So it'll be interesting to see from an economic standpoint these permitted and planned converted assets in downtown Boston, what is going to happen to them. And just to note on the conversion of office to residential, it's extremely, extremely expensive right now to do those conversions. Until the economic headwinds on the lending environment and construction costs start to correct themselves, it's going to be very difficult to convert these assets, particularly the older, what I would consider to be the B-class low-rise, mid-rise buildings that are so prevalent in the Seaport and throughout Boston. So, again, it's back to time and patience. It will recover. I just don't have the crystal ball yet to tell you kind of when and what that wave is going to look like.
All right, thank you, Peter. And adding to that, speaking from taxation angle, I could say with regards to lab space, that this year there was a change in the tax code that is very unfavorable for labs. It's the expiration of I have to start a tax code. It's the IRC 174. So while you used to be able to deduct those lab expenses right up front, now you're looking at a 5-year period to go ahead and expense those. I don't really have a suggestion outside of write to Congress. Greg, you spoke some this earlier, but I'd like to ask, as demand continues to waver, how far out does the pipeline of new projects run, and how is the Seaport being impacted?
Well, I don't know about the last part, but I'll take a swing at it. So volatility is part of our industry. It's just what it is. For us, diversification is key, not unlike anybody here and what they do with their portfolio. What we did back during the pandemic, like many of you, is reimagined and reinvested in ourselves, our firm, and began thinking about data analytics, bid-hit ratio, market return, et cetera. Now, I didn't do that because I'm a boomer, and I got somebody smarter to do that, that's sitting over in that chair over there, Nikayla, to do that work for me. We invested in young, innovative talent to tell us where the market was driving. So we diversified our portfolio as such. We don't forget the fact that we live in a very secure education and health hub. So what we did was intentionally began to go after the higher ed spaces and find our way to Brighton and to the Harvards, MITs of the world to work in the education spaces. So we stopped looking, I guess, aggressively at other spaces and began intentionally working at those that would begin what we call a recession-proof model. I mean, it's important for us not to go back into the same model pre-pandemic. And so we began to build what we call a recession-proof model. Cross-train our people, look at markets that were more sustainable, and reinvent ourselves. And what we found in doing so, it mitigates what we call that volatility. It mitigates that fact. So we're very positive, again, moving forward. We're very positive, very strong. Our pipeline is well beyond 26 because we were thoughtful and changed what we are doing immediately and looked 5 years out to stay ahead instead of changing with the market, and that was very important for us. So it wasn't a happenstance. Now, you're going to ask me about the Seaport. I mean, who knows? I mean, would we have, 1,000 acres down there, part of which maybe 25 to 30% Massport owns. So the future of the Seaport, is a crapshoot to some degree. Massport has sort of disposed of land, as you all know, which led to a lot of the success on these mega projects on the Seaport, and the other portion of private holders. So my sense is I'm going to jump on Peter's bandwagon about patience, about seeing where the market drives. I mean, I am not a crystal ball, but here's what I will say. The Seaport will be successful. I mean, we all know what Seaport Square has driven, really the market in the total landscape of the Seaport. So I don't see any failure in sight at all. We're very, very enthusiastic. We just broke ground on another life science project right in Dry Dock. The two towers, maybe 300 to 500 square feet. So it continues, is my point. So I'm very excited about the Seaport, its opportunities, and very, I think, optimistic about where it's going.
Thank you, Greg. Kate, next question's for you. Kate, what are the socioeconomic impacts on the communities who rely on thriving downtown business activity?
So I think that so many different communities, rely on a vibrant downtown. We obviously have our office workers. We have small businesses, especially retail and restaurants, who are extremely reliant on those daily commuters. And then I think we have a very robust tourism economy that really relies on the vibrancy of downtown. That economy has rebounded rather impressively. And I think if you spend a lot of time downtown, like many of us do, you'll notice that the tours are back with full force. And because foot traffic is a little is still quite down for office workers. Some days it seems like everyone is a tourist in downtown Boston, which I think is is kind of striking at times. But it's really about how we are activating our streetscapes, what kind of programming we're providing, and of course, really nitty gritty private sector and policy decisions about things like Peter said, with the future of work and return to the office and days per week in the office. I think when you look at how Boston compares to some peer cities, we're doing better on many metrics, which I think is encouraging, but we still have vacancy rates that are much higher than we would like to see, and foot traffic much lower than we would like to see, especially in certain sub-neighborhoods of downtown Boston. So I think there's a lot of creative thinking going on within the business community to think about how do we attract people downtown? How do we make the office a phrase I've heard a lot recently as a magnet, not a mandate? How do you draw people into your office? And you see some really exciting investments being made in office space in downtown Boston right now to make sure that the office is a draw for people, and that there's a reason for folks to be downtown and come downtown and stay downtown, whether it be to work or to go to a restaurant or to enjoy some seasonal event. And so I think there are a lot of exciting conversations going on around activation and programming, and what is the role of the city and the state and the private sector in trying to create a more vibrant downtown around the clock.
Thank you, Kate. Next question for Peter. Peter, what are you seeing on the robotics and clean tech front?
Probably the most encouraging component to commercial real estate right now in New England is clean tech, tough tech, robotic, batteries. A lot of the warehouse, intercity, kind of the subway connected cities of Somerville and Chelsea and East Boston that we call them sidecar suburbs, but anything that was being built or converted for last mile distribution space by any of the distribution entities like Amazon or Federal Express or UPS, those buildings are now being converted to this clean tech, rough, tough tech, battery type space, which is probably the one shining bright light right now that we have in Massachusetts regarding commercial real estate. The industrial construction in the suburbs still continues, but the demand and the rental rates for those spaces are starting to decline over the last 18 months. And thankfully, we've got the infrastructure space that can be converted to support some of these clean tech users that are in the market, that are being supported by the educational infrastructure and the demand for talent here in Massachusetts.
All right, thank you, Peter. And Greg, for our final question of the day. Boston Seaport has seen some rapid development in recent years, and Janney Construction has played a role in that development. From your perspective, which neighborhoods in greater Boston are on your radar from a construction standpoint, and which areas may be overlooked at the moment?
Seaport again, huh? Okay. So, we've had the pleasure of contributing to the Seaport. It's very difficult to compare any other neighborhood with the Seaport. I think at the beginning I told most of you I was born and raised here, and in the 70s when I was in high school, it was a wasteland. That's it. And don't get offended, those of you who are from South Boston, because it wasn't the Seaport, it's really South Boston is what it was.
I always heard it referred as the mud lots.
Okay,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
mud
yeah.
lots, and we won't go too far with that because you know where that goes. But here's the point, that became a boom town as we all know it. The development just sprouted up, so to compare emerging markets and regions is very difficult. And again, I'm very enthusiastic about its success. I look at Nubian Square as an emerging area. Nubian Square, the former Dudley Station, is the center of Boston. And Nubian Square has re-identified itself as the Art and Innovation Center, anchored by the Bruce Bowling Building, which was a public building, and surrounded by LMA and the Education Center, Wentworth, Northeastern, LMA area. So that, to me, is emerging because right now what we're seeing is mixed use, we're seeing plenty of resi, and we're seeing a lot happening there. So I see that as the next emerging hub, if you will. Obviously Brighton, Brighton, Harvard, whatever you want to call it. Brighton and what's happening over there in the 3 million square feet-ish that's going up across the bridge in Alston. We're playing a role over there as well, somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 700,000 square feet. I'm talking about emerging. But when I think about opportunity, what comes to my mind is Mattapan. And I think it's a sleeper. Mattapan at the base of 138, whether you're coming from New York, Providence, down 95, and down 138, you enter into a very underdeveloped square. And that, to me, is an opportunity to create the next hub, if you will. People, in my mind, overuse Gateway. That, to me, is a gateway that I think we all need to be thinking about and offers the same proximity off the highway. So, again, I'm very encouraged about these emerging regions in Nubian Square, but I'm enthusiastic about the opportunity in areas that we often don't think about. So I look at Mattapan, and as we've contributed to the Seaport and we are contributing to Nubian Square, I look forward to creating and contributing to another hub in Mattapan.
All right. Thank you, Greg. All right, I'd like to thank Greg, Kate, and Peter for their time today. And been waved through that. We're at the end of our time for the panel. So thank you all very much. Thank our panelists again. And everyone have a great morning.